Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner, and this is stage one of the UAE Tour. Now, we all know the MO and why we want to tune in and watch today's race, because it's going to be crosswinds throughout the whole 151 kilometers of today's stage. That's pancake flat. It'll come into a circuit with about 20 kilometers to go. They'll do a few laps, and then, of course, it's going to be a field sprint because it's pancake flat, right? Well, it's pancake flat, but there's some crazy amount of wind out there, and it's going to cause chaos for all the riders. We know here on stage one of the UAE Tour, this is the big showdown for 2023 amongst all the top sprinters in the world, because Gaveria's here from Movistar, Dylan Groenewegen's here from Jayco Alalula, Mark Cavendish is doing an appearance here for Astana, and he wants to put on a show, of course, because we know the whole drama from leaving the Quick Step team, going over to B&B Hotels that then folded at the end of the season, and then jumped over to Astana with Case Bowl. So he wants to put on a show because Evenepoel brought him over to Astana, and this is a good place to start winning, right? Now there's other big names like Tim Miller, who took the spot from Mark Cavendish last year. They're over there at Quick Step, so he's putting on his show here for Quick Step team, and he wants to do well. But Remco Evenepoel, the GC threat, who of course won the Tour of Spain last year, the World Championships, and then of course won LBL. He's starting his big time season off right here at the World Tour race for Quick Step. Now, I know he's already raced earlier, but this is when you start getting into some important races, because valuable UCI points really start coming from these World Tour races. So there's lots of reasons to tune in here on stage one of the UAE Tour. Now, all the riders are going to be nervous because we know there's a lot of wind out there, and when you see all the riders basically coming up to the start line, I can tell you they might have been there 20 minutes before, because when I did Tour of Qatar back in my Lotto Soudal days, you knew you needed to be at the start of the line, because even in the neutral section, when we started rolling out, we were doing 80 kilometers an hour in a tailwind just to make a right turn at kilometer zero, and then everything would blow up. Today's race looked exactly like the same MO to me as it did back in the Qatar days, because once the racing started, the first attacks went, and we see the tail end of the peloton already strung out, and then bam, there's catastrophic bikes and bodies flying all over the place from the first crash of the day, which is less than 10 kilometers into the race. Now later we'll see another crash from the back view of the bicycle, and you see it's Sepp Kuss and Scottson that are going down, and Sepp Kuss will go down hard, but he will get back up into the race. Up front, with about just before, after 60 kilometers to go, there's a group there of about 20 guys strong, and it's looking pretty decent, but it does get brought back. And then we see the big time attack from Remco Evenepoel. Now, before this attack, when I backed the film up, there was a lot of sprint time bonuses. Luke Plapp from Ineos was super aggressive for these time bonuses. Remco Evenepoel pulled a couple of time bonuses for himself. But Luke Plapp, let me remind you guys, he went top 5 on the general classification here at the UAE Tour last year in 2022. So the Ineos rider is motivated and looking strong throughout the early part of today's stage one. Now, with Remco Evenepoel attacking, I thought he was the one that was lighting this race up. But when we look a little bit further, he's actually bridging up to the UAE team rider that started the attacks up there. This will build about a 50 rider group that splits off from what was left of the peloton, and now we got groups chasing each other all over the place. As we see up front, Quick Step is super motivated to keep this 50 rider group up, and Bahrain Victorious is helping out a little bit, but in general they're lacking the help of all the other riders. And I gotta agree with the other riders. Once you're 50 strong, there's not a whole lot of benefit here. There's plenty of sprinters in this group that are fast. Dylan Groenewegen's in this group. Phil Bauerhaus is in this group. Tim Miller from Quick Step's in the group, so that's why they wanted to go fast. Of course, Bahrain Victorious got 4 or 5 guys in this group, and one of them's Phil Bauerhaus, and then they have their GC guys, Peo Bilbao, up there. So they're motivated to make this work. But in general, when I see a group that's 50 strong, I don't see a whole lot of advantage to that. So I wouldn't put much effort into trying to keep a 50 rider group up the road. But like I said, with those two teams pulling, they get a 4.5 minute gap on the second group here on stage one. And you're just assuming at this moment while sitting on the couch that this second group will never see the first group again. But without the gelling going in that front group, finally, Bahrain Victorious back off the throttle. Of course, we see Remco Evenepoel and Quick Step back off the throttle a little bit. And as the kilometers are clicking down, all of a sudden we see that the second group's got a chance of getting back together. Now, they got different MO's up front because just under 30 kilometers to go with about 29. This is the last big effort here we're going to see to try to keep these two groups apart. And guess what? It's Quick Steps up there. Remco Evenepoel, Bert van Leeuwenberg's up there, and Tim Merlier, and they're throwing down a big dig here on stage 1 of UAE Tour. We look a little bit further back in the next picture. It's the UAE riders. There's Vegard, there's Berg, and of course Adam Yates, their big-time GC hope here to win because Tadej Pogačar decided to race in Spain and not come to his UAE sponsor tour here. Now with those 3 riders, Vegard, he's starting to fall apart fast. We see Bjerg take over, and he's trying to get Yates up to that front group, but he can't quite get it as the gap is opening up from the UAE Team Emirates. Now we see the chicken wing coming out from Bjerg, and his wing is flapping all over the place, look like a chicken with his head cut off, hoping that Yates can close this gap, but Yates can't close it. Guess what though? Plapp can. Plapp does a big effort and he bridges across with Olaf Koy, the Jumbo-Visma sprinter, on his wheel, and this makes 13 guys in the front group. Now, Mark Cavendish made it. Cees Bol made it. 3 quick-step riders made it up there with their GC guy, Remco, Bert van Leeuwenberg, the super domestique lead-out sprinter, and Tim Merlier, their sprinter. So quick-step's looking fantastic. We got a 13-rider group. They got their sprinter and their GC guy up there, so they got nothing to worry about. They're thinking this is fantastic. Bahrain Victorious is in this front group with 4 riders. They got Nicholas Arndt, Govakar, Phil Bauerhaus, and of course Peo Bilbao, their GC guy. So they're rounded out well. Now, Lotto. How did Lotto Destiny do? Caleb Ewan, he made it in there, and he's got some help there from Drisner. Drisner's a fine lead-out guy and a big-time help, and he's going to put on this good, important show here on today's stage 1. Now, with this group of 13, as they're going up the road, this is looking bad back there for UAE team members, because let me remind you guys, they won last year and they won the year before that with Tadej Pogačar. But like I said, he went to Spain and he's not here at the UAE Tour. So they're doing everything they can back there, but they're not well organized back there because you see Bora Hansgrohe, who came with Sam Bennett, they're spread out all over the place. UAE spread out all over the place for the very first time throughout this stage 1, because honestly, sitting up here on the butterfly effect, UAE team Emirates for Adam Yates, they did an amazing job of always having teammates around them right up till Remco threw down and split this group up. Now with this group of 13, the gap is blowing up all over the place with every kilometer. They're putting time on the second group behind, and the third group behind them is closing up to the second group at still about 20 seconds back there. We crossed the finish line for the first time on today's circuit, and you see it's about 18 kilometers to go. The gap to the second group's at about a minute, and the gap to the third group's at about 1 minute and 30. Now things start getting interesting. Everyone in this front group was working, taking pulls. Olaf Koy may be the one sitting on a little bit more than others, but I still seen him at the front doing pulls. And then all of a sudden, we get into just under 3 kilometers to go, I think at about 2.3, and it's Phil Bauerhaus, Bahrain Victorious. He backs off the throttle and opens up a gap to Remco Evenepoel, to Luke Plapp, and to his teammate Peo Bilbao, and those 3 riders start accelerating away. This is where Dresner goes to work for Lotto Destiny, because Caleb Ewan's a big time, one of the best sprinters in the world, 1 or 2 depending on your take. But with Dresner up there, he closes the gap. He doesn't hesitate at all. They come out of the roundabout with about 2 kilometers to go. Everything closed up again, and it's 12 riders. They did lose one Bahrain Victorious rider back there, but I don't know where he came off. So we've got 12 guys coming in the finish with 2 kilometers to go. They'll all rotate through again until about 1 kilometer to go. That's when we see the gelling of this group start to hesitate. And with that slight hesitation, guess what? Remco Evenepoel knows he wants to win here today, and he wants to keep the GC lead as much as he can. So with 1 kilometer to go, Remco Evenepoel finds his way through the little group, a bit of hesitation, and starts taking over the pool at the front. He'll pull to about 600 meters to go, and this is when Dresner, Lotto, comes to the front. Now behind him, we're going to see there's Olaf Koy. Right behind Olaf Koy is going to be Caleb Ewan. Over to the right is Mark Cavendish with his man in front of him, Cees Bol. And Mark Cavendish, Caleb Ewan bumping 2-3 times as we're coming down this section with about 600 meters to go. We'll see up front, Dresner goes all the way to the right. Now he looks back and he knows he's got his teammate, his sprinter, Caleb Ewan, and he needs to way out. So he's going to move back to the center with about 400 meters to go. This is when the sprints action really starts, because at 250 meters to go is the right turn, and they're going to exit with about 200 meters before today's finish line of stage 1. So that means If you're Quick Step, this is when you got to go to work if you're Bert van Leeuwenberg. So he starts accelerating his sprint with about 350, 300 meters to go. All of a sudden, he's taking over the front. You look over to the right side, it's Case Bowles, and he's got Mark Cavendish on his wheel. But guess what? Caleb Ewan, he knew he had to switch off of Olaf's wheel, and he switches off just as Bert van Leeuwenberg's coming by. He's doing some bumping there, of course, with the sprinter Tim Miller that's on his teammate's wheel, Bert van Leeuwenberg. Caleb Ewan knows the right turn's coming up. He's got to be on the inside line. He can't give it up. As Bert van Leeuwenberg's starting his sprint for that final 250-meter right turn, he's going hard. Case Bowles doesn't have the legs to get Mark Cavendish to this corner first as Mark Cavendish gets pushed in the back. Now, as we fly through this final right turn, we see it's Bert van Leeuwenberg on the front, Tim Miller sitting second wheel. Of course, Caleb Ewan won the fight there for Tim Miller's wheel, and he comes through third. And then all of a sudden, it's Case Bowles as we're exiting this turn that's opening up the gap up front to the two sprinters, Tim Miller and Caleb Ewan. That means it's going to be big-time work back there for Mark Cavendish if he wants a shot at winning, but there's 200 meters still to go when they exit the corner. As they come out of the corner, Tim Miller, he's going to go for it. He hits the afterburners, accelerates hard all the way to the right side of the road. They got a gap on everyone else behind. Tim Miller's doing solid, but he's got Caleb Ewan, who I think is one of the finest sprinters in the world, on his wheel. Now with 100 meters to go, Caleb Ewan starts his acceleration. He comes out to the left side of the road. 50 meters, he's gaining right up there on Tim Miller, but he still hasn't passed him. 10 meters to go. They're neck and neck. Right at the line, it's a bike throw. I can't tell you who won, and neither can anyone else. I can tell you Caleb Ewan, he celebrated with his arm up. We see Tim Miller, he didn't do any celebrating, but when we look at the picture, both heads are completely down. So Caleb Ewan, I don't know how you knew you won today's race, but at this point in time, no one else knows. Not commentators, not myself, not any of the officials. We're going to have to wait a long time. Now we're going to see a little quiet time on the side of the road there from Tim Miller as he's trying to probably take a thought on how today's stage went, right or wrong for him. We see Caleb Ewan, he did a little bit of celebrating until, of course, one of the female assistants of the race organizers came up and told him that he's going to have to come to the tent and take a look at the TV screen because we're not certain if you're the winner, Caleb. When we get over to the TV screen, we see Tim and Caleb both looking at the TV screen, looking at each other because the camera's shooting them from behind, showing them up on the TV screen. And then all of a sudden we see these two guys looking at each other at the sprint line. You see Caleb Ewan pointing to something, but I don't know how he could tell the difference. No one else could tell the difference till finally they give the win to Tim Miller to win here on stage one. Now, the only thing I can tell you is that Tim Miller's shadow was more in front of Caleb Ewan's because when you look at their tires, they're exactly the same, and it should have been two winners here at stage one of UAE Tour, but Tim Miller's a little bit taller. His shadow went a little bit further, and certainly that must have been how they decided today's race. Now, with the win today for Tim Miller for Quick Step, it's a little bit heartfelt, I'm sure, for Mark Cavendish, who ran it out the podium in third because Tim Miller took his spot on Quick Step and left Mark Cavendish fighting to find teams for this 2023 season so he can try to go and beat Eddie Merckx's record. Mark Cavendish looked pretty solid, was gaining a little bit in the sprint, but in general had nothing on Tim Miller and Caleb Ewan going all the way to the line today on stage one. Photo finish, super tight, fun race to watch. If you get a chance and you have time, definitely go back and watch today's race. Everything tactically looked pretty solid in my book. This was a fantastic day of racing on the Butterfly Effect. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition real soon.